right now, across all 159 counties in Georgia, there are just thousands of people who are actively talking themselves out of life-saving medical care. And they're doing it using, like, the exact same five-word sentence.
Right, the "I should handle this myself" line.
Yes, exactly. I should handle this on my own.
It's incredible, because that single phrase is, honestly, it's likely doing more structural damage to public health than almost any other barrier we track. The internal gatekeeping there is just incredibly powerful.
It really is. And well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are putting a stack of, I think, very revealing notes on the table today.
Yeah, these are fascinating.
They are. They're regarding a Georgia-based telehealth practice called Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC for short. And alongside their clinical notes, we're unpacking this really poignant midday thought piece titled, "You Don't Have to Handle This on Your Own." And our objective here, for you listening, is to really map out this fundamental shift in how we approach mental health. We want to look at the actual, on-the-ground logistics of moving away from a reactive crisis response model.
Because that's what we've been stuck in for decades.
Exactly. Moving away from that and toward accessible, everyday wellness care. Okay, so let's unpack this.
Well, the materials offer a really fascinating blueprint. Because what we're examining here is, it's a systematic dismantling of the barriers that keep people isolated.
Yeah.
It's a look at how you change the healthcare narrative, not just through psychology, but through actual literal structural execution.
Which is so needed. But let's start with that five-word sentence you brought up, because the thought piece actually spends a significant amount of time deconstructing this, toxic myth of extreme self-reliance.
Oh, absolutely.
It isolates the word "this,"
Right.
right? People say, I should be able to handle this. But when you look at the source's actual definition of what this entails, the list is just staggering.
It really puts it into perspective.
It does. The text defines this as bills, work, parenting, relationships, health worries,
Grief.
yes, loneliness, the news, and just the overarching pressure to, hold it all together with a smile. That's not one thing. That's everything, all at once, every day.
Yeah, the cognitive load of that list is immense. I mean, we're essentially looking at a plural crisis that's disguised by a singular pronoun.
Wow, yeah, a plural crisis.
Right. When an individual groups systemic financial stress and existential grief and the daily grind of parenting into one single bucket called "this," they are setting an impossible metric for personal success.
They're flattening all these massive, complex stressors into, a single item on a to-do list.
Exactly.
Okay, think of it like someone desperately trying to balance a mountain of fragile plates.
Oh, I like that visual.
Right. Society kind of convinces you that you're just struggling with one plate. Like, I'm just having a hard time at work today.
But you're not.
No, you're trying to balance the entire kitchen. And you're wondering why your arms are giving out.
And that's why this specific phrasing in the text matters so much. They highlight this really powerful reframing. The source argues that asking for help isn't admitting defeat,
Yeah.
It's simply admitting you're human.
Admitting you're human. I love that.
Yeah, because a human being was not designed to independently process the threat of global news cycles while simultaneously managing modern financial systems and, isolated parenting.
We just don't have the capacity for that.
Right. And this mindset, this toxic self-reliance, is the primary barrier keeping people across Georgia communities from accessing the care they need.
Because the obstacle isn't always a lack of clinics, right?
Oh, not at all.
The immediate obstacle is the person sitting in their car, gripping the steering wheel, just telling themselves they aren't sick enough to need help yet because they haven't completely fallen apart.
Because to walk inside feels like a concession. The thought piece highlights that if you view everyday life as an adversary you're supposed to conquer solo, seeking backup feels like surrendering.
It feels like you lost the game.
Exactly. And the sources emphasize that until we dismantle that internal shame mechanism, all the external healthcare solutions in the world won't see full utilization.
The cognitive friction just prevents the action?
Right.
But, okay, you bring up the internal shame mechanism, but let's say someone manages to overwrite that programming.
Right.
If they decide, okay, I'm dropping the plates, I'm human, I need help.
Which is a huge step.
A massive step. But then they immediately collide with how the medical system historically views them.
Right.
The mandate from the source material is that we have to normalize mental health support as standard wellness care rather than crisis intervention.
And that ties directly into CHC's core mission, which is to humanize therapy by debunking the stigma of seeking help.
Yeah, but let me play devil's advocate here and push back on that a bit.
Sure.
Culturally, therapy is viewed as the emergency room for the mind.
Right.
We treat mental health like a blown transmission on a car. We wait until the engine is literally smoking on the side of the highway before we call a tow truck.
Unfortunately, yes, that's the reactive model.
Right. And CHC is trying to introduce the concept of like a routine oil change. But how realistic is it to genuinely shift a community's mindset so drastically? To treat mental health care more like taking a daily vitamin than calling an ambulance?
Well, it requires a massive structural pivot,
Yeah.
which is exactly what these notes outline.
Okay.
If you look at the psychology of a crisis model, it inherently relies on desperation. It relies on shame. It's reactive. If therapy is only for emergencies, then stepping into a therapist's office is essentially public confirmation that you've lost control of your life.
I see. So it reinforces the shame we just talked about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But standard wellness care is proactive. It's normalized. You go to the dentist for a routine cleaning to prevent the root canal.
Yeah, nobody waits until their teeth are falling out. Well, ideally, they don't wait.
Right. And as long as therapy is viewed only as a last resort, that stigma is going to remain. You can't erase the stigma without normalizing the care itself.
So if mental health care is treated as that routine oil change, the social friction just kind of disappears. Going to therapy just means you're taking an hour to, calibrate your mind rather than signaling to the world that your life has shattered into pieces.
Precisely. You don't need a formal diagnosis of severe clinical distress to benefit from, say, relationship coaching.
Right.
Or to learn tools to manage just the ambient anxiety of daily life.
Lowering that threshold for entry sounds great, but I have to say lowering the threshold in a midday thought piece is one thing. Philosophy without logistics is just kind of wishful thinking.
There's just words on a page.
Exactly, because if someone listening right now wants that proactive oil change for their mental health, but the nearest mechanic is like 3 counties away and only open during their exact work hours, the wellness model instantly collapses.
It falls apart completely.
Right. So we have to move from the philosophy of care to the actual operational footprint of coping and healing counseling.
And that's where the clinical notes become really important. Because CHC isn't just a traditional clinic. They are a comprehensive telehealth practice.
Right. Utilizing over 15 licensed professionals, according to the notes.
Yeah, 15 professionals. And they address a wide variety of needs. Trauma, anxiety, family dynamics, relationship coaching.
All the heavy plates.
All the plates. But the critical data point here is how they deliver that care. They cover all 159 counties in Georgia using HIPAA-compliant video sessions.
Now, obviously, we all know what telehealth is, right? The video call itself isn't a new invention.
No, we're all very used to Zoom by now.
Yeah, exactly. But the insight here is how CHC uses that technology to specifically bridge the severe urban-rural healthcare divide in a sprawling state like Georgia.
Because geography dictates psychology and healthcare.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, think about traditional high-friction therapy. In a rural county, a patient might face a 2-hour drive just to see a licensed professional.
2 hours each way.
Right. So if accessing care requires a 4-hour round trip, navigating time off work, sitting nervously in a waiting room, and spending significant money on gas, the patient is forced right back into that crisis mindset.
Because nobody makes a 4-hour round trip for routine maintenance.
Exactly.
You only make that drive if the transmission is already blown. That's wild. The physical geographic barrier literally mandates a crisis intervention model.
That is exactly it. What's fascinating here is that serving all 159 counties via video is the exact logistical mechanism required to make standard wellness care a reality. You cannot normalize care if people can't physically reach it.
By bringing a trusted advisor directly into the safety and comfort of your own living room, CHC neutralizes that geographic friction. A resident in a deeply rural area has the exact same access to trauma support as someone living in downtown Atlanta.
And the notes specifically say this approach prioritizes patient comfort and accessibility. There's another layer to this too, especially in those smaller towns.
And the privacy aspect.
Yes. The lack of anonymity is a massive deterrent to seeking help in a small community.
Oh, for sure. If you walk into the one therapy clinic in town, everyone in the waiting room knows you.
Your car's parked out front for the whole community to see.
Right. Oh, look whose truck is at the clinic.
Exactly. So bringing the clinician into your living room via a HIPAA-compliant video session bypasses the social surveillance of a tight-knit community. It lowers the initial psychological barrier of public perception.
Okay, so we've bypassed the internal shame of admitting you need help. We've shifted the framework from crisis to wellness, and we've erased the geographic and social hurdles using telehealth.
It's a very thorough model.
It is.
Yeah.
But wait, we are ignoring the ultimate barrier here.
The financial piece.
Yes. When we read the list of stressors making up that mountain of fragile plates, the very first item on the sources list was bills,
Financial strain is consistently the primary driver of exhaustion.
which creates this brutal paradox in traditional therapy.
Right. A patient is drowning in financial stress, so they seek therapy for that anxiety, and the medical system rewards their vulnerability by handing them a massive invoice for a 45-minute session.
It actively introduces the exact stressor that triggered the crisis in the first place.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So how vital is this financial piece to actually getting people to ask for help?
It's everything. And the text addresses this catch-22 head-on. CHC promotes financial inclusivity by accepting private insurance providers and Medicaid.
Okay.
And the notes explicitly state that this often results in no out-of-pocket costs for the patient.
No out-of-pocket costs, but I mean, I have to challenge the viability of that business model for a second.
It's definitely not the easy route.
Right, because accepting Medicaid is notoriously difficult for private practices. The administrative red tape is thick, the reimbursement rates are historically low compared to, like, out-of-pocket cash payments.
Oh, absolutely. So how is a private organization sustaining a diverse team of over 15 licensed professionals while leaning into a financial system that routinely underpays its providers?
It requires a very intentional, mission-driven structure. You see, practices that rely solely on affluent, out-of-pocket clients are essentially operating as luxury services.
Wow, yeah. Luxury mental health.
Right, but by integrating Medicaid and private insurance to eliminate out-of-pocket costs, CHC is actively removing the very stressor bills that might prevent a patient from seeking help.
So they are treating the billing process as a foundational component of the therapy itself.
Exactly. They're absorbing the administrative friction so the patient doesn't have to. It's a perfect alignment of their financial model with their overarching mission to humanize therapy.
That completely reframes how a practice functions. If the clinical goal is to reduce a patient's cognitive load, eliminating the financial friction is basically a direct medical intervention.
It democratizes the wellness model. You can't claim to debunk stigma if your services are gated behind prohibitive costs.
It means the proactive mental health oil change isn't just reserved for people with premium healthcare plans and lots of disposable income.
Right. When you clear away the logistical roadblocks of geography and you clear the financial roadblocks of out-of-pocket billing, you isolate the only remaining variable, the patient's willingness to make that paradigm shift.
It makes the transition from admitting defeat to admitting you're human functionally possible.
It really does.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's briefly recap the journey we've been on today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started by unpacking the crushing weight of everyday life, that mountain of plates.
Right, the plural crisis.
Yes, a plural crisis of this. We explored the vital shift from a shame-based crisis response to standard routine wellness. And we examined how CHC is breaking down geographic and financial barriers across Georgia with telehealth and inclusive billing.
The takeaway here is that while the feeling of being overwhelmed is incredibly personal, the solutions have to be systemic. You can't just tell people to ask for help. You have to build an environment where asking for help doesn't cost them their privacy, their livelihood, or hours out of their day.
And for those of you listening who might be staring down that massive list of stressors right now, if you are the one quietly carrying the weight of the bills, the grief, and the news all by yourself, the sources we reviewed provided direct contact information.
Yes, the resources are out there.
You can explore CHC's platform at cheattherapy.com, and their phone number is 404-832-0102. Again, that's cheattherapy.com and 404-832-0102.
The expectation for you to handle modern life as a solo survival mission is just a cultural fiction. The infrastructure for shared resilience is right there, and you don't need to wait for a catastrophic failure to use it.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought to mull over today, inspired by the text. If asking for help is truly just admitting you're human, what other heavy, everyday burdens in your life are you currently treating as solo survival missions when they were actually meant to be shared?